Lando Norris takes an exciting, hard-fought pole position at the Belgian Grand Prix. It's his fourth pole of the season. I'm Tim Hauraney. This is Nailing the Apex. Let's just jump right into Q3 and qualifying, and we'll sprinkle in some information from the sprint that had happened earlier on Saturday morning here in Canada, Ontario, Eastern Standard Time. But let's start with Lando Norris. He had said that his second push lap, so Lando had provisional pole in Q3, and on that final push lap that he had done in Q3, felt that it was better, but was actually slower and had lost time in a few corners. But it's really small margins, he was saying, and clipping a tiny bit of the curb here and clipping a tiny bit of the curb there, and it was just all of those little hundredths of a second that he was missing out on throughout that lap. He's going to have to go back and take a closer look at where exactly, because he was just so in the moment when he was on that push lap, but averaging 156 miles an hour. Really impressive from Lando here in Spa at the Belgian Grand Prix. For the race on Sunday, it's going to be interesting, though, because for Norris, he thinks that once they start jumping around on the different compounds, and remember, Adam and I talked about this in Thursday's setup with Pirelli bringing different ranges with their tire compound. They have the C1 as the hard, but then they're moving to the C3 as the medium and the C4 as the soft, so they're missing out on C2. So there is going to be a pretty big delta between the C1 tire and jumping to the medium, which will be the C3 tire. So he feels that once teams start moving around with the strategy within the race, he said it's probably going to be, and I'm paraphrasing, pretty hectic with that. Just a lot of different moving pieces. So it should be pretty exciting in terms of the strategy and what different drivers want to do in the race. As for the sprint, it didn't really offer up a load of passing, but there were moments where you could see that Lando did have a little more pace than teammate Oscar Piastri. And I think when Lando went back following the sprint, just making some fine adjustments with the car that he knew was going to be not only good for qualifying, but most importantly, it was going to be good for the race on Sunday, because it is expected to rain on Sunday, and that's going to throw a huge wrench into everyone's plans. So a lot of teams switching back and forth with setup throughout the weekend. Obviously, they're only getting free practice one, and then it's straight into the sprint quali. So not a lot of time to really optimize the car or trying to find a balance that's going to be good for both racing and for qualifying. And most importantly, finding a balance that's going to be good when it rains. You have to remember the cars do enter Parc Fermé at the end of qualifying, so teams can't touch the cars at all. So whatever you ran in terms of your setup for qualifying on Saturday, that's going to carry over for your race setup on the Sunday. So a lot of different teams making some interesting adjustments, and we will get into a lot of that as we open this up a little bit more. But for Lando Norris and for the McLarens, not making huge adjustments like other teams were. They were preferring to have nice high downforce, lots of load on the car, so they could get themselves through the corner quicker, not really having the straight line speed that some of the other teams opted for. So if you were running a higher downforce setting, so you were losing a lot of your downforce on the car, you're going to go faster in a straight line, but you're going to lose out in the corners, and you're probably going to have higher tire drag as well, like we had saw at the British Grand Prix with Max when they trimmed the car out completely and it started to rain, and you could see it really affecting him. And I had said on the Saturday night before heading into the race that was going to really affect Red Bull Racing, and in particular Max Verstappen in the British Grand Prix, and sure enough it did. Same thing here. If it starts to rain, you can see the teams that have went for that higher downforce option really start to struggle. But the setup, that Red Bull made, because they did make a significant setup change, because I would say they were probably the biggest. And I'll touch on that in a little bit, but just wanted to point it out, put it fresh into your mind. Excuse me. Piastri, interesting for him. He had an interesting quali. For Oscar, he scored his 7th consecutive top 3 start on Saturday by qualifying P2. Just thought he left a little bit on the table in qualifying on Saturday. He had lost some time in a few corners on his final push lap. It wasn't the cleanest Q3 for Oscar. He did say the car didn't really feel any different, though, from sprint qualifying to regular qualifying. In sprint qualifying, Oscar did get pole for the sprint race. However, he lost that to Max Verstappen, who had a dynamite getaway. But for Max, the big thing with him in the sprint that helped him the most was that he was running a lot less downforce than the McLarens were. So faster in a straight line, a little slower in the corners, but able to hold on to position and get the win simply because he wasn't running a ton of downforce on the car. So for Max, he needed to execute perfectly in the sprint to make sure he captured that victory. Moving on to P3, Charles Leclerc was Leclerc's 4th top 3 quality of the season. Really interesting because I had written this on Twitter before the start of qualifying, and I had said that my prediction was Norris, Piastri, and Leclerc for qualifying. The reason I had written that was because of setup changes that Max was probably going to have to do, and I felt that Leclerc already did have quite a bit of downforce on the car. You could tell that by the sprint. He wasn't gaining much in a straight line. However, cornering speeds were quite strong for Leclerc in the sprint. So I felt that, the Ferraris were running a good amount of downforce, so they weren't really going to have to make too many setup options or changes between the sprint race and between qualifying. And so that's why I put Charles where he was, because he's been feeling really comfortable with this car over the last few races. Remember, they had brought a really big upgrade to this car for the British Grand Prix. And then again, we touched on this on Thursday, but they brought a huge rear suspension update for the car as well. And that's going to take time to optimize, to really understand it and to see where it has its strengths and weaknesses. But for Leclerc, he's really happy with the upgrades. He feels that they're working. They just need to fine tune it, he said, and that's going to take time, he had mentioned. He didn't leave much on the table with his lap and quali on Saturday. He says the upgrade is a step in the right direction, and he felt he says it feels different, but it's going in the right direction. Different in a good way, he had said, but he didn't feel that it was enough to catch the McLarens, because McLaren did bring some updates to their car for this weekend, and they had brought in other updates to the car, in weeks past that was going to add performance to the McLaren, but McLaren was going to need time to optimize it and to figure it out. I should mention the upgrades that were brought for this weekend. So let me open up that file that I have on updates for race weekend so that I can go through that step by step. So which teams did bring updates. So for for McLaren, rear wing was the biggest thing that they brought. That's circuit specific. So the type of track that they're racing on at the Belgian Grand Prix, that deems it circuit specific. So if there were, let's say, another type of a track that's going to be like Spa, then this rear wing would be reused for that. But this rear wing that they have made is specifically designed as a low downforce rear wing, and it's an updated version of the low downforce rear wing assembly. So they've basically improved the overall efficiency across the drag range, they call it. So it is suitable for multiple different circuits. Now the drag range is essentially let's just say when you take the rear wing and you flick it forward. I'm just going to use this as an example. You flick it forward, you're adding downforce to the rear of the car. Now, when you take that rear wing and you start moving it backwards, so towards the rear of the car, it's called trimming. So you're essentially trimming the car out, which allows the car to be faster in a straight line, and you lose downforce from that. So just a little bit of explaining for that one. Ferrari, obviously we had mentioned it, rear suspension. That's performance base, local load, rear corner. So also within the brake ducts as well, that's also been added. Rear wing, again, circuit specific, but it's a rear wing flap element that they had brought, and it allows them to trim the car out when they need to. So given the aerodynamic efficiency, this is what the FIA's description of it is quote, given the aerodynamic efficiency requirements of the Spa circuit, a lower downforce modulation will be made available, reducing the chord of the rear wing flap element. So essentially allows them to trim the car out as much as they can when they need to. So that's Ferrari's updates. As for Red Bull Racing, they brought a lot. They brought a ton of updates to their car, and this is probably going to be it for them when it comes to bringing big updates to their car. Front wing, that's performance based. Side pod inlet, that's for reliability. The Coke engine cover, so the mounting the big cover that sits over top of the engine, that's for also reliability. And they've also moved around internally some cooling elements. They've moved some things around underneath the bonnet. Front suspension, also brand new. It's revised inboard fairings on the top of the wishbones, so adding more camber to the front of the car. Rear corners, also, that's for performance at the same time. So for Red Bull not having a circuit-specific rear wing, they already kind of have something that they've been using, but bringing a brand new nose for this, even mechanical components as well with the with the front camber adjustments, and then you've also got rear corners as well, and that's essentially brake duct specific. And then obviously you've got the Coke engine cover cooling, and then also underneath as well. So for Mercedes, they brought front wing and a rear corner, both of those for performance related. Then you've got Aston Martin. Again, some big updates for Aston Martin. Again, this is probably going to be it for them in terms of bringing a lot of updates to the car. I think this is probably as far as they go with it. But again, it's going to take them time to really optimize it. The updates that they brought, not really so much specific to Spa, but for other tracks that are later on down the road. Think Budapest, so think Hungary. So these updates would most likely work there, but for them, they brought a front wing, which was circuit specific though. New nose, rear wing, which is also circuit specific, beam wings as well. So again, a lot of stuff to add to what they had already brought in for the British Grand Prix. Alpine, they brought two circuit specific pieces of equipment, a rear wing and a beam wing. Again, low downforce rear wing, low downforce beam wing for them. Moving on to, who else we got here? RB. So Racing Bulls only brought one circuit specific update. It was a rear wing, but then they've added a rear corner and also they've added to the diffuser. So the diffuser geometry has been updated for their car. And then moving on to Williams, again, probably the last of the Williams updates: floor fences, floor edge, side pod inlet, Coke engine cover. That's pretty hefty update for them, especially with the new floor at the same time. So that's pretty much everyone for updates. So as we move forward through this, who has new updates, who don't. I want to jump back to Leclerc, P3 in qualifying. He thinks that they are about, on average, 3 to 4 tenths in qualifying behind McLaren, and that the upgrades won't bring them 3 to 4 tenths, but it will help them get closer. And that's probably more so in the races, not necessarily in qualifying, because when we take a look at the race conditions for Ferrari, they are actually strong in the Grand Prix. They can be stronger, and I think this will help them. P4 for Max Verstappen, won the sprint race, like I had mentioned. Was a great drive from him in qualifying and also in sprint, I should say. Now, he was running a setup that was low downforce in the sprint. So the car was quicker in a straight line, like I had mentioned, than it was in the corners. But since it's supposed to rain for the race on Sunday, Red Bull Racing opted to make a big step in terms of, big setup change on Max's car. So gone was the skinny rear wing. They added a high downforce spec to his car for qualifying and for the race. Now, Max lost about 3 tenths in the first sector. So if you think of the Kemmel Straight, even Eau Rouge now, right? It's basically, they're really straight lining Eau Rouge almost. So you can consider that a straightaway as well. But coming out of the hairpin, so the very first turn, all the way through to the end of the Kemmel Straight, Max he probably had a 3/10 advantage on pretty much everybody, but he lost that 3/10 advantage when they ditched the low downforce rear wing, and he lost that 3/10 in the first sector, but he gained 6/10 in the middle sectors by having as much downforce on that he did. But Max thought that the balance didn't really improve from sprint qualifying to Grand Prix qualifying, even with more downforce on the car, which I felt was really surprising to hear. But Max was hoping it was going to help the driving feeling. He said he that he had with the car. It was feeling quite draggy. He had said so. That sensation of what he's used to with sprint quality, the car is probably feeling like a bullet going down the straightaway. But when you add a lot of downforce to the rear of the car, you as a driver can actually feel how slow you are going on the straightaway. You can actually feel it sort of holding you back. And it's an annoying feeling for sure. So I can understand what he's getting at. The other part of it is he couldn't really attack the entries into the corners, is what he was also referencing. He did want to start third, so could be a bit of a difficult day for him on Sunday, starting from P4. However, if it rains, he thinks he basically thinks that fighting the McLarens could be hard. And I think essentially he's thinking that if it's going to be dry, because I think if it's going to rain, I feel that he's going to have a chance at the McLarens if it rains, because Max is obviously Max, and tricky track conditions he's usually pretty good at. But again, for his quali lap, starting P4, simply lost a ton of time coming out of the first corner. So the hairpin there, he just had a huge moment. You can see the tire marks he left on the track, just a ton of wheel spin that he had kicked up and lost about, I think he in total lost about 5 tenths. I think probably in around that range. I would say like 4 to 5 tenths in total throughout the lap. And it's kind of just like compounds itself as you kind of go through the lap. Once you lose time in one corner, sometimes it just compounds itself and you keep losing time, if that makes any sense. Alex Albon had an incredible qualifying, P5. He said that he had a good headwind in turn 1, and essentially when you have like a good headwind, it actually kind of helps you slow the car down more so you can't actually brake later, which is very, very helpful. The other part of this is that the team lost a bunch of downforce heading into qualifying. So they were running with a lot of low downforce on their car for sprint quali and the sprint itself. And if Alex felt, the car was quite draggy, and it was one of the slower cars on the straights as well in the sprint. So the team shed a bunch of downforce off the car, and that, made the tire prep a little more challenging. However, I think they'll be in a good spot if it does rain, because that car is quick with its new updates as well. It just depends how much they trimmed. I don't think they trimmed like a ton, but I think it was just enough for him to get just a tiny bit more straight line speed. So if it does rain, I don't think it's going to affect Alex too much, but we'll have to wait and see. But someone who I think it's going to affect if it does rain is George Russell. He felt that this was one of their worst qualies of the year, if you removed what happened in the sprint quali, but he wasn't totally upset with P6, but Mercedes opted to run a lower downforce setting. A higher downforce setting. So the race could be difficult for them on Sunday if it showers, if it rains, because it's going to have a lot of tire drag because of it. Harder to keep the car on the track at the same time. So I think they may have made a mistake here, but I think what Mercedes may have been going for is let's try and get track position. So qualify the car as high up as you can and hope it becomes a track position type of a wet race. And so I don't know if that's going to play out for them. Let's see what happens. I mean, Sunday could be, crazy race. Yuki Tsunoda, P7. He was happy with that one. Only about 0.3 off of Max too, but he got the new floor updates at the last moment from the team. And so he got those floor updates right after the sprint race. You have to remember, they never practiced with any of these updates, and the team did a great job of turning the car around, but he had no idea what he was getting himself into heading into qualifying. That's got to be a flying by the seat of your pants moment. So extremely exciting for Yuki. He felt the upgrades were a bigger step, and that was one of his best qualifying of the season so far. I think it is his best qualifying. Actually, it's his highest grid position with Red Bull Racing, and he'll be doing his 100th Grand Prix on Sunday. So pretty exciting stuff for Yuki. Very happy for the guy. He'd been working really hard. So yeah, it's nice to see that pay off for him. Isaac Hajar, P8, was quick all day. He was expecting more than P8 though at the end of this one. He was expecting more like, P5. He was just a tenth away. It was just a tenth away from him, he said, but the car had great drivability around the track on Saturday, and he wants it to be dry for tomorrow. So we'll see what happens with the Racing Bulls, but just a few hundredths separating Hajar and his teammate Liam Lawson in P9. Another really nice quality from Lawson. Said the car had been in the best place it's been, but made some small mistakes on his push lap in Q3. He felt like he missed out on, he felt that he'd missed out a bit on Saturday quali. Alan Permain, I think, has got to be the most happy out of those two guys. New team principal at Racing Bulls, taking over now for Laurent Mekies, who's down at Red Bull Racing as their CEO and team principal. So for Alan Permain, definitely has got to be very excited for that one, because pretty incredible session from both Racing Bulls. P10 for Gabriel Bortoleto. Lewis Hamilton lost his best lap, so Bortoleto was allowed to move through to Q2. His first run in Q3, Bortoleto had it deleted for track limits himself, so he knows what the track limits penalties is all about. He is starting to get more comfortable with the car by the looks of things. I mean, I think he's turning into a really great qualifier. Really is. P11 for Esteban Ocon. He was just 20 thousandths of a second away from punching his way through to Q3. And he felt that there were some positives with the car, but didn't maximize the full potential of the rear wing they had on the car for qualifying. Again, I think they are running higher downforce levels, so should be quicker in a straight line. He said it was difficult to like, it was a difficult choice to decide if they should add more downforce or take some away because of what's going to happen tomorrow if it does rain or if it doesn't. He did point out, though, that his teammate Oliver Behrman added more downforce to his car, so could benefit him, because for Behrman, P12 for him, I think for him, he made some mistakes, obviously, on his final push run in Q2. I don't think it helped that Yuki Tsunoda had passed him heading into the final corner when Behrman was doing his tire prep. You could see it once Ollie got out of the final chicane that he was having a hard time keeping the car on the track, trying to get the tires in the right operating temperature. Looked to be a challenge, and I don't think Yuki passing him in that moment helped anything for him. But he did lose about 3.5 tenths in turn one, so a shame for Behrman, because I think he probably could have qualified well into the top 10. Pierre Gasly was P13. Great effort from him and Alpine to get that car there. P14, Nico Hulkenberg. P15, Carlos Sainz. He looked quick in Q1, and for some reason, he went slower in Q2 than he did in Q1. He wasn't really sure why. So he thinks that if it rains, could really benefit him on Sunday for the race. P16 for Lewis Hamilton. So Lewis got hit with track limits at turn 4 and pushed him obviously out of qualifying. So they made changes to the car in between, from like sprint race to the like Grand Prix qualifying. And the car didn't feel terrible for him. He was pretty hard on himself afterwards, though. That's for sure. I think we take a look at after the track limits where he ended up. I think he was, before he got knocked out due to the track limits penalty, I think he was around P7, P8. He was close to Leclerc. And I thought that, this was going to be a good session for Lewis. Both drivers have seemed pretty happy with the new updates that have been added to the car. So it sounds like the car is going in the right direction. However, Lewis obviously just making that small mistake, which is just fine margins. I mean, it's that one's got to be tough for sure. Franco Colapinto is P17. Kimi Antonelli P18. That's a tough quali for him. I think for his sake, though, they weren't running a lot of downforce, so it was probably a pretty wild ride in that Mercedes. And Antonelli had said that he's been lacking confidence and struggling to get the best out of the car. And I can understand that if you're not running a lot of downforce, that can be a very hair-raising ride for sure. And obviously for Antonelli, he just wants to keep it on the circuit and not, bin the car, because if he does, then that doesn't help him either, nor does it help the confidence. So I think for him, it was just trying to get the most out of himself in the car as much as he can and see where he ended up quali. They will start, I think they're going to start Antonelli from pit lane, because I think they're going to take that car out of Parc Fermé and make some drastic changes to it, maybe give him a better handling race car for Sunday. And even if it rains, I think that will also help as well. If they have a little more downforce on the car, help with the confidence as well. Alonso right behind Antonelli. Fernando definitely disappointed with where the car was in Spa. The layout doesn't suit the Aston Martin at all, but he is hoping that it rains and it could create some opportunities, because Lance Stroll is starting right behind him. Again, for Aston Martin, I don't necessarily think they are too shocked by where the car is. Obviously the car, their car is interesting, because sometimes it can be decent and sometimes it can be absolutely horrible. And I don't think anyone in that team really can figure out exactly when this car is going to be good, where it's going to be good sometimes. I mean, they have an idea. But again, I don't think they knew Spa wasn't going to be one of their better tracks. Sure enough, definitely wasn't for qualifying. I think they will be strong in Hungary, though. So, watch out for it and watch out for Aston Martin in Hungary. But very exciting qualifying. I actually really, really enjoyed that one. I always love it when you get to see these guys push the limits of the cars at Spa. It's always incredible to watch, incredible to see what they do. We have, let's see here, questions. Okay. From J13. Let's see. Was Oscar Piastri aiming for P2? Okay, I can see. Okay, I understand the question. No, because you always want the pole position records, right? And just having that statistical category checked in your F1 career is really important. So you're always pushing for that. However, Piastri may not be in a bad spot starting P2 on Sunday, but you have to remember, like, if it rains, and Lando they both get an equal getaway, so they both get a good getaway, then Piastri's not going to be in the greatest of spots either, because they have Charles Leclerc right behind as well, right? So, yeah, I see what you're saying. You're hoping obviously that he gets a good start, gets a good slipstream, but you remember there's no DRS either. And both of those McLarens kind of have a similar type of downforce level on it. And if they do, then that also means that passing, going down Kemmel Straight, they both get an equal start. Probably not gonna really help him all that much. Let's head over to Blue Sky, but great question. Let's over to Blue Sky. Question on there. Geraldo. Way to nail the quality prediction. Thank you. Finally, right? Getting some recognition here. Feeling good. Is there a world where Piastri noticed what happened in the sprint race with Verstappen overtaking him for a second on the grid and intentionally eased up so he can try the same on Norris tomorrow? Another one of these questions. Really good question, though. Really good. I would say if Oscar were to be running higher downforce, so if Oscar had a more trimmed out rear wing, so that would mean he would be faster in a straight line. However, both McLarens are running quite a bit of downforce. So straight line speed isn't their bread and butter in Spa. It's the cornering, it's the braking, it's the cornering, it's the tire preservation as well. And so, I mean, if Oscar gets a great start and Lando doesn't, then yeah, for sure, it's definitely going to benefit him, no question. But if Lando gets a great start and Oscar gets a great start, then both of them are kind of going to be canceled out, right? Like there's no DRS, so it's going to be, it would be challenging for him to pull off a pass for the lead of the race at the end of the Kemmel Straight. He'd really have to send one and hope that Norris doesn't turn into him. I don't know if you want to take that risk, especially when you're championship leader, right? Like, remember, Norris is the one that's chasing you. So it's kind of sort of one of those things to, like, let's just see how the race plays out. And then we'll make adjustments on the go is probably Piastri's best bet. And also, with the different tire strategies that are going to be available to everybody, I think it really could mix things up. Lando's really quick. Oscar's really quick. The fight between those two on Sunday is going to be incredible, regardless if it stays dry or if it rains, because both of them are just so equal. So it's going to be a very exciting race, everybody. Adam and I are going to be back Sunday night to tape a review pod on the Belgian Grand Prix. So we'll talk to y'all then.